unfortunately, some children are more picky than some, and it's typically not due to the fault of the parents, or or it's just how the child is. But I would say try and make it fun, vary the foods, diversify the foods, try color. There's an account that I follow.
All right, Esosa, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Will you like to introduce yourself so people know about you and just your background in nutrition?
Yeah. Okay, well, my name is Esosa Osifo, and I have an Instagram account called Meals with Sossy because I love to cook. I love to cook, so I share recipes, meal recipes, kitchen hacks, tips, but more, I wouldn't say more focused on children's meals, but meals for the family. So I know how challenging, and as someone who has to cook for her family, I know how challenging it can be sometimes to prepare meals day in, day out, week in, week out. And so I thought to, start, I love to cook, as I said. So I thought to start sharing sort of a library. That was how this whole idea came about. I was like, I need to diarize or put in the library, a digital library somehow, all of the things that I cook, the meals I cook, the juices, smoothies, all of that stuff, snacks. And so that was how my account was birthed. And so yeah, I've been sharing on that. So that I would call that my, I think there's 9 to 5, and then there's your 5 to 9 job. So that's my 5 to 9 job. That's what I do after hours. And then my 9 to 5, my day to day, I work as a project manager in IT. I have 2 children, 2 amazing children. And yeah, along with my husband, we're doing life together. So yeah, I hope that gives a background. But actually, I would say for my intro to nutrition, or my relationship with nutrition, I'm really particular, or I try to be particular about what we eat, what I eat, what I feed my family, what I feed my children. And so since when I had my first child 4 years ago, I started looking more into nutrition and feeding children. It started off with when you're at the 6 month mark, you're looking to transition your child more from milk to solid foods. And that just opened me to this world of, nutrition and feeding and meal planning, meals, cooking, all of that stuff, especially for the family. So, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. And it's always great when there's someone who also has small children and you're trying to feed them. So you have like some hands-on experience with it, as opposed to you just like are passionate about it. Yes, you might have the experience, but it's different when you actually give it to the picky eater or something like that, and you actually get that experience. So that's super cool.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
So, how do you feel about this idea of preparing food for your children with love and kindness? And I bring that up because I've also witnessed, like in Nigeria, like that African way of this child must eat. So we're like forcing, there's like 5 people trying to force the child to like take pap and just like all of that. And it's just like, it's for your
Yeah.
own good. It's for your own good. Like, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts about that?
Okay, I'll preface this first by saying one of I think my first post, or one of my first posts on Instagram, I said love, like feeding or cooking is my love language. Like feeding healthy meals. I cook with love and I feed with love. And that really drives a lot of what I do. Like the meals that I cook at home. I think it helps that I actually genuinely love to do this. So that helps. To your point about force feeding children or pressuring children to eat, yeah, I think it's a global thing, but I do empathize. I think in a lot of situations, people don't know better, because when you know better as a parent, any good parent would want to do better, right? So, and I think there's this misconception that if the child doesn't want to eat, then you have to force them into compliance, which is wrong, to be honest. It's not right. So I think we have to lead with compassion, and we have to feed with compassion, I'll say, and feed with love and grace. I always say to give children grace and to also give yourself grace as a parent. Or it could be dad feeding the child, mom, or an aunt or an uncle, whoever it might be, right? So I typically say to feed with grace, lead with grace, because to them, to children, especially a younger child who's just like getting introduced to food, this is their first time. They've only had, or for a toddler, they've only had like a year or two of experience in eating. But as an adult, you've been eating all your life, you've been exposed to so much. And so we tend to expect um those behaviors like adult eating habits from children, but they're just children. And believe it or not, I think eating, yes, there's the innate ability, or the innate, ability to eat, but you also have to teach good habits. And I think when you have this mindset, pretty much all that I said, it helps to ease the tension, and you can really do better. I'll say do better with feeding children. But at the end of the day, I will say, I know people are just trying to do the best that they can. Sorry, my light is blinking. I know people are trying to do the best that they can. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I think some of the challenges, like you said, with toddlers, they're just starting, right? They're just learning about just habits and stuff like that. But it can be
Yeah.
really challenging for parents or grown-ups that are responsible for them, because it's
Yeah.
like, we need to get you fed, we need to get your weight up or your height or whatever it is. We need to get these nutritious things in you, and you're being picky, or you're being specific on what you want. And so there's like some frustration there. What are some strategies you recommend for building these healthy habits that are also, I'd say, relatively not as stressful as things can be, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. Funny, this week I actually shared, recently rather, I actually shared a reel with some tips. And I didn't know these particularly. I'm gonna say I didn't know these. Like, I wasn't born with this knowledge. It it has come over the years from feeding my children and learning, and doing my own research and things like that. But I would say to really form great feeding habits, the parent has to feel, or whoever is feeding, like the caregiver has to feel empowered. Like, if you have to feel empowered, you have to feel in charge, and you have to know that you can do this. First things first. You also have to have the mindset, just like what I shared earlier. You have to have the mindset, like shift your mindset. Like, it took year for me, for I use myself as an example. It took me, I think I was well an adult into my adulthood before I started eating sushi, but I had been exposed to it repeatedly. And then one day I decided, okay, I'm gonna try, I'm gonna try this. So same thing with children. I said, I started off first by saying, lead with grace, lead with love, but be open. Like, unfortunately, some children are more picky than some, and it's typically not due to the fault of the parents, or it's just how the child is. But I would say try and make it fun. Make it fun, vary the foods, diversify the foods, try color. There's an account that I follow, kids feeding color or eating color, and it's really helpful. There's so many, like, nature has blessed us with so many colorful and amazing foods, right? So make it exciting. I also said that you have to, okay, I said make it exciting. And then with regards to picky eating in particular, one tip that has helped me with feeding my children and getting them to eat foods that they, initially weren't interested in, was repeated exposure. So, and I'm gonna caveat and say this may require a lot of food wastage, because they will likely not eat, the first few times that you, or the first 20 times maybe that you even present the meal. For example, I'll use broccoli and my daughter. I have, since she was old enough to start off on solids, I have presented her with broccoli, but she just wasn't interested. She'll eat everything and not eat the broccoli. But I kept because it was important to me that she, I like broccoli. Her older one likes broccoli. So hey, why not? And it's healthy, right? Right? Why not? So repeated exposure. And it was only recently, in fact, the first time she really ate the broccoli off of her plate was a couple of weeks ago, and she's 2. So it's taking us over a year and a half to get to this point. So I would say repeated exposure, even when it feels frustrating, you feel like, oh, this child hasn't, but you have to keep at it. I will also say not to hover. I find a lot of people do this. I've even had someone helping me watch my children at some point, and she helped to serve the meal, and she stood like and was watching. And I told her, I said, how would you feel if you're eating your own meal and someone's like standing there watching you? Like it's going to make the whole experience like full of pressure, right? Like you'll be pressured to eat, or you feel like, oh, why is this person watching me? So like let them do their thing. Yes, sometimes I have found this has happened repeatedly, and I see it with other children on Instagram, for example, posts and videos, for instance, and you may place the food in front of the child, and for the first 10 minutes, they're just playing with the food. Because as an adult, at this point, once your food is there, you start eating. But for children, sometimes they have to feel it, they have to feel the texture. They have to, I have seen this happen at home, right? And then maybe 10 minutes later, they actually start eating the food. So patient, you have to be really patient. Try not to rush meal times, I would say. If you can, I know life is busy. We're working, we have other things that we're doing, but try not to rush meal times. I'll also say try to eat with your children if you can. At meal times, you're sitting there and they're eating.
Yeah.
So what was I saying? Oh, see, I was also talking about another helpful tip is to sit and eat with your children. Or if you have siblings, or if you have more than one, I find it really, really helps for them to eat at the same time, because children learn from each other. The one is they feed off each other, right? You see the other one eating, and so you're eating too. You see the other one eating like a carrot, and you think, oh wow, okay, it seems cool. I'm gonna try this carrot. Something else I've done is to like encourage, like for example, eggs. Oh, you don't like eggs? Oh, but eggs make you so strong. They make you strong, they make you healthy. And then I'm actually eating the eggs and like making a fuss out of it, saying, this is so delicious. Oh my gosh, you should try it. Even for an adult, you would want to try what's being eaten. So I find these are tips and tools that have helped us in our journey. And I've also tried to diversify. I find sometimes we feel like, oh, my child likes rice, so you just keep feeding them rice, and that doesn't help in the long run. You have to introduce them to a wide range of meal options, of course, depending on your ability, right? So yeah, introduce them to new foods. Encourage, if they go to daycare, if they are being fed at daycare or somewhere else, encourage whoever, like the provider there or the caregiver there, to also work with you if you're having difficulties with picky eating. So these are some tips I would have to share. I would say to help with picky eating.
Oh my goodness, those are such great tips. I
Thank
really love them.
you. Thanks.
You're welcome. What I've found is that we take things so personally as grown-ups. We're just kind of like, I spent 2 hours making this food,
Yes.
and you don't eat it, you're being disrespectful, or you're just being stubborn and all of that. So I found that in my growth as a parent, learning not to take it personally. If
Yes.
they're like, I don't want this, especially the older that they get, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
you don't want it because
Okay.
there could be different reasons, right? There could be like a texture issue. There could be like a little
Yes.
bit of an allergic reaction that maybe it's not a full-blown reaction, but it just doesn't feel comfortable for them. Maybe they ate it in the past or whatever. So, but can you share some of the reasons why somebody like your child can decide that they're not interested in that meal, just so that maybe that can help us so that we don't take it personally?
Yeah. Okay, great question. As an adult, there are times I'm not interested in eating something. But the thing is, I'm old enough to have the power to cook or to provide myself with the meal that I want to eat. I feel like eating steak, for example, or fish, whatever, and I'll make it available. I'll cook it, or I'll have someone cook it for me, or I'll DoorDash or Uber, order via Uber Eats or whatever it is. But for children, they do not have that choice. Mostly, unless, okay, say you're an older teenager. At that point, you're not even a baby anymore, right? But they don't have the choice. So the meal is plopped in front, the plate is presented to them, and it's like, well, this was not what I expected. And they don't always have the chance or the ability to really communicate what they want, right? I think at some point they get to a point where they're old enough to say, you can ask, oh, what would you like to have for dinner? What would you like to have for lunch? And they'll say, oh, I'd like to have, beans or chicken, right? But sometimes they may not even know, or they may ask for beans and chicken, and then you present the beans and chicken an hour later, and they're having a fit because they don't want that anymore, right? So I think we have to be conscious of the fact that children do not necessarily have they don't have the choice. So you have to lead with that in mind. I don't always want to eat certain foods. On Tuesday, I may not want to eat rice. I want something else, right? And so it's human nature. So we have to also apply that grace to children, knowing that they probably ate rice yesterday, and I know mom is tired, and rice was the only available meal today, and they don't want to eat rice again. So I think we have to you have to have that mindset, like I would keep bringing it back to leading, like feeding with grace and feeding with love, and trying to see things from their perspective. I hope I answered your question correctly, because you.
Oh yes, oh yes, for sure you did.
Yeah,
Just the whole idea of feeding with grace and feeding with love.
yeah,
And I'll
yeah,
just add, don't take it personally because it's not about you. It's really not about you. It's just
yeah,
about them figuring themselves out.
yeah,
And I really
yeah,
like that you mentioned that oftentimes they don't have a choice. They're kind of helpless. And so the best way to just try to I guess empower themselves is just to say no or to cry
yeah,
or whatever. So
exactly.
they're just
Yeah,
just try to communicate
yeah,
in the best way that they know how.
exactly. And
So
sometimes
like
they've yeah,
yeah,
oh,
go
sorry. I was just gonna add that sometimes they've had a really long day. They may be overtired. They
mm-hmm.
want to sleep, but they don't know how to communicate that I want to sleep. I'm really sleepy. I'm really tired. And so they're throwing a fit. And you have to really learn to self-regulate as well. Otherwise, you too, as a parent, you throw a fit as well, and then you have like chaos. And then dinner times are like, once meal times become a time or a period of pressure of like, oh, eat your food, otherwise, then your body naturally will start to respond to that environment. It becomes a toxic feeding environment. I know this sounds extreme, but really it's not. It becomes a toxic feeling environment, and no one would want to. So once it's mealtime, like, they would probably start feeling stressed. And once you're feeling stressed, you're not able to deal with situations as best as you can, right? So we also have to, yeah, I'm not saying play music or play calming jazz or whatever it is, but just think, okay, let's make this fun for children. Children respond to fun, to play. They respond well to fun, play, that kind of stuff. So, involve them in cooking too. I think I omitted to mention this earlier. Involve them in cooking. I involve my children with cooking. I've bought age appropriate kitchen tools, and at some point we'll graduate into like the proper kitchen tools. But for now, like, my son helps with chopping peppers, even my daughter too, even though she's just like playing with the thing. But we're cracking eggs we're stirring the batter if we're baking something, making cakes or muffins. I find involving children makes it's the involving children in the process makes them more open to actually partaking of the results, right? So yeah.
Mm. Oh, so many good ideas there.
Yeah, thanks.
And I love that you mentioned you've provided age-appropriate tools. So someone listening to this might be wondering, okay, how do I find out what are age-appropriate tools? Do you
Yeah.
have any resources, books, videos, Instagram handles that you would recommend that people go to get more details?
There are a few. I would probably tag, I'll leave a comment in underneath this video with some accounts that I have found really helpful. I think for tools right now, the key tool the main one we have is the cutting tool, like a knife. It's like a plastic knife, because I think like I wouldn't want my toddler handling an actual knife at this age. For spoons, like we use the same spoons, like the wooden spoons for stirring, the whisk. I didn't get smaller whisks for my children. They use the same adult size whisks because I'm also trying not to have too many gadgets at home, too many things at home. The knife tool, I got it from, it comes in a set. There's like there are like three sizes for the knife, and there's a chopping board. I can link, I've shared a link to the Amazon I've shared the Amazon link in the past, but I will also see if I can share it somehow with this underneath this video. So yeah, that's what we've used so far. For accounts, yeah, I said I'll tag some. I can't actually, it's just been a variety over the past few years. I see things and I save them. And then I refer back to them. I see a child like, oh, chopping, with, oh, I wonder if I can find that, online, or I can find that at the store. And then yeah, I look for it and I find it and I get it. Yeah. And then
Wow, yeah.
for books, so I would say for anyone who's just starting feeding, introducing their children or their babies to foods, one account that really, really helped me was Solid Starts. It's on Instagram. I found that resource to be extremely valuable. They also have a website. They have plans that you can buy, and they even offer some of their products for free if you're not able to afford, if you can't afford them due to certain circumstances, whatever they might be. So there were times when I want to feed my child a certain meal, and I would just go on Google, Solid Starts feeding kids chicken, for example, and they have great and amazing graphics that are really that have been that would that would be the first account that I would recommend, especially for introducing children, younger children, babies to solids. And yeah, for the others, I'll tag them. And then I'd mentioned Kids Eat in Color. I really like that one. It has all of these colorful ideas for feeding your children different colorful meals, and to set them up and to create the right foundation for healthy eating.
Mm. Wow, so good. And yeah, like you mentioned, there's so many resources, and for sure we'll add it to the show notes when we get it from you. And I've used Solid Starts too. I think they even
Yeah,
might
oh,
have
great.
an app. I don't know, but they're really good with
Yeah.
just like ideas on what babies can eat as you transition. So that's pretty cool.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier about just like the stress and how eating can become like this. You didn't use this phrase, but this is the way I think about it. It can become like this uh power like over type of opportunity, because parents are like, you're gonna eat this, and the child all of a sudden is like, I'm not gonna eat it. And then all of a sudden it might even be not, it's no longer about the food, it's about, you can't tell me what to do. And
Yes.
so we find that we're fighting these battles and it's not quite necessary. Do you have some tips about just like how parents can transition, like if they've already been in that situation where they've been creating a bit of toxic environment when it comes to feeding, the parents are not looking forward to it, the kids are not looking forward to it, what are some things they can do to start moving to a more collaborative kind of experience? And I know you mentioned cooking together can be helpful. Do you have other strategies that you can recommend?
Yeah. I would say I will bring it back to your mindset because I think a lot of this starts with the mind. You have to ask yourself, do I want meal times with my child or children to be a battlefield of emotions, of egos, parental ego versus, do I really want that? What is the end goal? The goal for any well-meaning parent is to feed their child a healthy meal as best as they can provide, right? And I'll take it a step further. For a lot of people too, it is to set up your child or your children for a lifetime of healthy eating. Because believe it or not, whatever, like you're forming as children, whatever you feed your children, I believe forms the blocks of the building blocks or the foundation is the foundation of how they would eat in the future. Typically, I would don't quote me on that, but typically, you have to really ask yourself, what do I want? What's the goal? The goal is to feed my child, like for this child to eat. And I would say there are times where child just doesn't want to eat and they would rather eat a banana. And I would say sometimes, like, just let them eat what they want to eat, to be honest. You've made broccoli, you've made this fresh new pasta, green pasta. I mean, real story. I saw this recipe online and I thought, oh, this is going to be amazing. My son loves greens. He's going to like this. And so I made like this nice pot of green pasta. It was just blended instead of tomatoes and peppers in the pasta sauce. I blended up greens like spinach and things. Oh my God. It was I'd never seen him respond so negatively to something I cooked. I remember him running around the house and he's like, I don't want it. It's disgusting. I hate it. I want red pasta. I want red pasta. I don't want green pasta. And I had spent some time. I thought this was going to be really exciting. So, well, I ended up eating it by myself because, and I ended up giving him what he wanted. I had two options: force them, him and his sister, force them to eat this green pasta that they wanted nothing to. Of course, she followed her brother too. And once she saw he wasn't interested, she said she wasn't interested as well. I had two options: force, pressure, or actually, provide something else that they would eat so that they can sleep, have a good night's rest with full bellies. And so I provided the alternative that they wanted. It was as simple as that. So sometimes, I feel you have to stoop to conquer, like they say sometimes. Just give them what they want. It's not, you try again tomorrow, but whatever it is, like just keep trying. Don't don't give up. Don't feel discouraged. It's not a reflection of you or your abilities or your cooking skills as a mom, as a parent. It's not. It's just they don't want what they want. They want what they want rather, and they don't want what they want. So there are times where I've provided a meal and it didn't want to eat. And I sometimes they snack through the day, and because they've snacked so much, they may not be hungry at dinner time or at lunchtime because they've had like multiple snacks and drinks. So you also have to think of their day, like, okay, what have they eaten so far? And okay, maybe they're not ready now. How about maybe I'll serve dinner again in another 30 minutes, time permitting, of course, or in another 45 minutes and see if they, or add something else. I would also mention, and I'm sorry, I think I'm jumping back and forth here, but
Oh, you're
I
fine. You're fine.
yeah, thanks. As things come to my head, I want to make sure I communicate. I also talked about in my recent reel, I also talked about safe foods, like offering safe foods. Safe foods are foods that, a child likes and loves rather, and would happily eat. So, for example, instead of say your child doesn't like broccoli, but they really love rice, let's say jollof rice or jambalaya rice, as some people call it. And they really like that. So instead of, oh no, let me give a different example. Let's say your child doesn't like beans, right? And but they like rice. They would eat rice anytime, any day. But beans, it's been a struggle. So I would say instead of serving beans by itself and saying, here, eat it, this is what we're having for lunch, that's what I've prepared. How about you serve it with a safe food, which is rice. So you serve a smaller portion of the rice that they like and a smaller portion of the beans over time, right? And so at least they're eating versus not eating at all. And then that causes a stressful situation for, the parent and then for the child. So utilize safe foods. If they love bananas, consider, slicing some bananas with their meals. If they love broccoli, believe it or not, some children love broccoli. Add it to their meals. Yeah, instead of just presenting them with the one and saying, here, eat it or nothing else. Yeah. I
Oh, those are
answered the
such,
question.
yeah, those are very, very good tips. And you're right, some kids love broccoli. My daughter loves kale, so
There
that's
you
always
go. See?
interesting.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
There you go.
yeah, okay. So what are your thoughts about some people feel like if a child is asking for a different type of food and you give it to them, you're creating spoiled
Really.
or entitled children because it's like, oh, so now you're going to make a meal, like 7 different meals for all the 7 different people in your family. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts about that?
I think there are times you have to be firm and say, this is what we're like. For example, you've made yams, potatoes for dinner, and then your child says, I want rice. And in that case, say rice is going to take you another hour, or you're tired, you've had a long day. Sometimes you have to you have to be firm. You have to, put your foot down and say, hey, this is what we've had for dinner. And this is what I've cooked for dinner. I'm hoping that you would at least try. Like sometimes you have to really negotiate. Like children are not too young for you to negotiate with. There are times I've said, okay, how about, okay, you don't want this today. I promise I'll make it for you tomorrow. But if I just, I want you to eat this today so that you have enough, you're energized for the rest of your day. I don't think it's spoiling children. I think you can, yeah, on the extreme end, it could be spoiling children. You could be, maybe I won't say spoiling them. I'll say maybe not setting them up really because especially if the child only wants to eat the same thing and then you're just agreeing and giving them the same thing every day. At that point, yeah, I don't think that would be the best. But like I said, sometimes you just have to be firm sometimes and say, this is what I've cooked. This is what we're all eating, especially if everyone's eating the same thing. This is what we're all eating today. It'd be great if you eat it too. We're all enjoying a meal together. Children do listen, when we talk to them, they're not too young to actually understand. Of course, there are situations where things don't go as planned, but yeah. And then I said, being firm and then being, negotiating. Actually, you can negotiate and say, hey, yeah, yeah, but I don't yeah, as much as we want to maintain the peace and just, I don't think it really sets us up for success in the future if you're always just so agreeable to what your child wants. Like if a child always wants candy after dinner, like you should clearly that's not a great choice that you should agree to, especially at nighttime, because tooth decay and all of that stuff. So big picture, like think of the big picture. I always say focus on what you want, like your end goal, what you want out of feed. It's not just feeding children. You're not just feeding, you're nourishing them, right? You're nourishing them. You're, teaching them good nutritional habits that will set them up for a lifetime of healthy eating. Yeah.
Mm. I really like how you said like setting them up for success and thinking about the big picture. Some people say that the way we teach our kids and we guide our kids with food can set them up to with their cognitive and emotional growth and development. What
Yeah.
do you think about that?
Um, I think there might be, like, if there are studies, I would believe. I think there's some truth to that, especially the atmosphere around meal times. If they associate meal times with battles, or like, you like sitting over the child or standing over the child and saying you must eat your food, or using pressure tactics and things like that, I can't imagine that would lead to a healthy outcome. I know as we grow through life, your life, all of your experiences sort of form the building blocks of your life, like the builds the house, like the structure of your life, right? I know it may be seen as a small thing, but it's not. It's not a small thing. And so like we also have to think of ourselves, like think back. I believe we've all had experiences when we were children. Still remember till this day, years and I was a child and I was served a meal. I don't even remember what the meal was, but I remember seeing these huge, like, purple onions, like the red onions, what we call red onions. I think they were sliced and they were cooked. And when you cook purple onions, it like can look black. And so to me, they just looked like huge black worms in my food. Yes. And I wanted nothing to have to do with that meal. And till today, I still struggle a little bit with having like seeing onions, especially purple onions, even white onions. I see people like just slicing onions in their meals. And I'm like, oh, like till today, I still cannot. So believe it or not, that has impacted my eating habits. And there's nothing wrong with onions. They're amazing, right? Unless you have allergies or something, but they're great, right? So as much as we may not know how important it is, these things are actually important and they may influence your attitudes to things, to life. For example, if you open up your child to multiple different meals, for example, who knows where they'll be today? They may be in Canada or be living in Lagos, and in 20 years they may be in an Asian country where they're like exposed to all these new foods. How are they going to survive if you teach them if you show them variety from a young age and sort of encourage openness to trying new foods, new meals, trying new things, I think that would also be reflected in life, right? Like not just with meal times, but with meals or with foods, but also trying things, being more adventurous. So I do strongly believe, yes, there is a correlation there, and it's something that we definitely shouldn't ignore. Yeah.
No, I really like how you phrase that. And what I've found with clients and even with the research is that oftentimes when kids they only want to eat something,
Yeah.
sometimes, not all the time, they've had really negative experiences with other food. And so this becomes their
Yes.
safe food. And so they're like, this one
Yes.
doesn't affect me poorly, so I'll just stick with it. So sometimes it might be an opportunity for the parents to kind of find out their kind of allergic reaction and
Yes.
then
Yes.
gently guide them to try new
Absolutely.
things as opposed to
Yeah.
either trying to force them to eat something new or trying to just pacify them by only giving them their safe food. So
Exactly.
there's
Yeah.
so much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, force never works. It is the last thing you want to do. Force, and we've even heard of situations where like there were catastrophic outcomes from force feeding a child. And I think it's something you should just never toe that line. Because I find the more you do something, the more you want to do it. You may force the child today, and yeah, they ended up eating. And then you think, oh yeah, it worked. And then you try again the next day. It's just I am 100%, a million, 1,000% against force feeding children because I feel it also stems from frustration as a parent or as a caregiver, as a mom, whoever it might be. So, and it's also important to communicate this to whoever is feeding, especially if you have a picky child, or a child that has certain allergies. I know we've dealt with allergies here too, allergies to gluten, to, a few things, milk, and we've had to make changes. It's not easy, it's time consuming, it's frustrating, but it helps to actually communicate to whoever it is that, hey, my child is a picky eater and I would really, they need patience, they need time to eat. And if the person is not, say you're looking for a new daycare, for example, or a new, new daycare, and if they're not, that's why you always have like interviews with the caregivers or childcare providers. And if you see that they're not they don't look like they're going to be willing to work with your child, then find somewhere else, because it's really important. There are times you find that there's a child who does well with eating at home, and then, they start going to a new daycare, and like things just change for the worse, because maybe pressure tactics are being used, or they're being force fed, which should never be the case. Yeah. And I would add again, I would also add this. If things, for picky eaters specifically, if things get really bad and the child is not eating, or they're losing weight, and then seek medical help. Talk to your family doctor. Like where we are, you have to talk to your family doctor first, who would probably then refer you to a nutritionist, or pediatric nutritionist, or dietitian. There are times that there's nothing you really do. Like, you really need to bring in reinforcement and get expert advice to help with feeding your child. So yeah, I don't think any parent should feel shame or anything. Like, hey, that's why they're there. Reach out for help, and hopefully, yeah, things work.
Shame is such a big word. I find that we make so many decisions out of that fear of shame. And so I'm glad you brought it up. Like, you don't have to feel ashamed for reaching out
No,
to experts. That's why
no.
they're there.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And I think sometimes we can be really hard on ourselves. We see other people posting, oh, you're their child. I see comments sometimes, not for me, for other accounts where I've seen like a mom posting that her child cleared his plate, or like you can tell that this child eats really good, and you scroll to the comments and you see people like really being negative, or some people, you can tell it's coming from a place of inadequacy. They feel inadequate because they feel some type of way, because, oh, it's like, oh, this person's child, she's showing off. No, they're not showing off. They're just, or sometimes people don't even believe that the child is eating that much. I would say focus on yourself. The goal is to get your child to eat better. Don't let, like, drown the noise. Don't let anything pressure you. If an account or a post is triggering you, especially, and there will be triggers, especially with eating, feeding your child, then don't follow them. Like, switch up your algorithm to not show you such videos or such content. I know one particular one, and this, well, it's not feeding solid foods, but like, I've seen posts in the past about, oh, people sharing like the freezer's full of breast milk. And you see moms in there like, oh, this you're showing off. And some people actually appreciate it. Some people would ask for, tips and all of that stuff. Like, don't let those things trigger you. Everyone's different. Some people are just naturally blessed with some people naturally just love to cook like I do. Some people, nah, they max 3 meals a week, and that's the most they can do. Work with what you have. Um, don't drown the noise. I'll end it with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. And yes, I feel like when we don't focus on the shame, we can make the decision to move forward to what we want. So maybe you're comfortable cooking 3 times a week, but you want to cook 5 times. You can move forward if you don't feel ashamed about it. Or if you say, I cook a lot, but I want to cook less, you can move forward if you don't feel ashamed about it. Or whatever it is. I just find that shame is not very helpful. And so I'm really glad that you mentioned it. Like, even things that we see online, because if you are sensitive to it and it triggers you, you don't have to be like, I'm going to be strong, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to be like, you can just make sure you're not seeing them anymore, get rid of all of them, say not interested, unfollow, whatever, just
Yes,
until.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's so
Exactly.
cool.
Yeah.
How do you feel about like education and nutrition? So whether it's for a toddler, there are lots of things that kids are learning as they're growing. Do you
Yeah.
think there's a correlation, or there's any kind of way that the nutrition that a child has impacts the way they learn, and whether they get to like school age and the way they learn in school as well?
Yeah. So when you say education, and do you mean like what children, the impact of what they eat on their education or their learning abilities? Or do you mean like education about food? I'm just trying to clarify.
Any way you want to respond is
Oh,
fine.
okay. Okay. I do think what we eat like matters a ton, matters a lot, especially for children, like children who are, constantly learning, they're growing at this young age, the development, there's so much going on developmentally with children. And so I think it really matters what we feed our children. I will speak personally for myself. I try to make as much as I can at home to feed them with stuff that we've made at home. For example, muffins, I've not always been, okay, I shouldn't say that. I've been baking since I was a child, but I grew up in the bakery pretty much. But I would say, I never really baked muffins for myself until I had children and I started baking muffins, right? I would much rather bake those at home because I know what's exactly everything that's in the muffins. I know the sugar content. If I don't want to use sugar, I can use other sweeteners like fruits, bananas, dates, or whatever it might be, right? Because I find a lot of the food options that we have, like in the stores these days, cereals, snacks, like they're full of so many unwanted ingredients. I'm personally passionate about that. They're full of all sorts of things like high sugars, colors, colorings, artificial ingredients that may not be healthy or may not be the best for children. Do my children eat candy on the occasion? Do they eat snack cookie? Yeah, absolutely, they do. Yes, they do. But I want a personal goal of mine is for the majority of their meals to be freshly made, baked, cooked, at home as best as possible. So yes, I do. To answer your question, I think that it does impact like what they eat because what you eat, you are what you eat, like they say. It's reflected in your bodies. For children, yeah, sometimes I think it's reflected in their bodies pretty much, but I feel it's also reflected in their mental capabilities. I know for one, like sugar can make a child, like excessive sugar can make a child really like active and, they may not be as focused as they need to be. So these are things that, I believe parents should be cognizant of, be mindful of what's like read labels, because whatever on those labels are the things that will be going into your child's body, good or bad. So there is definitely a relationship between those two things, and I think that we can't just leave things to chance. We have to take a front row approach to feeding our children healthy and nutritious meals. Yeah.
I love that. So I'm guessing someone watching this or listening to this might be saying, "Ooh, I really want to learn more about nutritious meals. I really want to learn more about ideas. I want to learn more." Like they just want to connect with you because they are inspired by what you're saying. So what is the best way for them to connect with you?
The best way to connect with me, I would say, is through my Instagram. Through my Instagram account. I will also share, I think I'll share an email with you as well. Yeah, through my Instagram account, please leave a comment or not leave a comment. You can leave a comment or you can send me a direct message. I check my inbox every day to make sure that I'm not missing out on any messages. And I have people reaching out to me to ask, oh, how do I do this? So I'm facing this challenge. What do I do? I don't have any formal education in nutrition or child nutrition, but I have a lot of experience in cooking and providing meals for my children. So I'm definitely not going to discount that experience at all. So yes, I'm very much reachable and I'd be so happy to hear from you. Yeah.
Yes, and your handle is Meals with Sossy, right?
Yes, Meals with Sossy, Sossy. Yeah.
Perfect. And we'll put it in the show notes as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
So for people who are listening, what is like your one last advice for parents in this journey to nutritious eating?
Yeah, my one advice would be gracious with yourself. You are doing the best that you can. I don't know any good parents who would not want to do the best for their child. Be empowered. Know that first of all, give yourself grace. You're figuring things out as well. Your child is figuring things out. So give yourself grace, be patient. yeah, lead with love as you do in other areas, in providing for your children, making sure they're clothed and sheltered, with feeding your children too. Lead with love. Try and derive joy, pleasure from actually cooking and preparing meals for yourself, your family, your children, and know that you've got this. Like there is no better parent for your children than you. So be empowered in this with this knowledge and yeah, go for it. And seek help if you ever need, if you feel like things are okay. I definitely need help. I'm going crazy. I don't want to be battling with my child anymore. And seek help. There are so many Instagram accounts. There's my account. Reach out to me, and or speak to your healthcare provider to get the help that you need. Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much, Esosa.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Asai, for bringing me on. Thanks.